Okay. Alright, that seems to work. Here we are under Hogwarts.
I'm on your side. Ah, watch it. Hey, be careful. What are you doing? Oh.
It'd help if he didn't look like he was grinning like an idiot. Okay, let's see here. Take that. Thank you very much. Is that demon pirate summoning area, right? Dear Savos, recently I had a visit of Idras Hlas, the oldest son of the Hlas family. He came to me with a request to keep safe a blade he inherited from his late father, the great Indralis Hlas, who passed away not 2 months ago. Young Idris told me the blade is twisted and he does not want it near him or his family. He did not say so, but I strongly assume the blade was involved in his father's death. Idris would like to get rid of or destroy the blade, but is reluctant to do so since it is a family heirloom. The blade possesses a curious magical power, and as such, Hlas came to me for studying and safekeeping the blade. I did a short study of it and concluded this is the powerful bipolar blade of lore. The decoration on the blade illustrates the twisted nature perfectly. It seems the weapon has a mind of its own, deciding on its own to send its target either into a blood frenzy or a calm state of mind. I am no weapon expert, but it is clear this blade is dangerous in the wrong hands. Therefore, I sent it to the college. You can keep it safer there than I can. Store the bipolar blade somewhere safe where none will touch it, but don't destroy it. Let's not rule out the possibility of Hlas coming to claim it at a later time. I trust you will know what to do. Your friend, E.D. The missing students were found in the midden this morning, dead as expected. None of us bothered keeping a detect life charm for the search at this point. The bodies were found together, each suffering the same deformities, peeled and bubbling skin on the arms and face. Conjurer's burn, as it's commonly referred to around the college. There's little doubt they were attempting a summoning ritual well beyond their capabilities. The relic nearby put any doubt in this theory to rest. I admit that I've never seen one like it, a large segmented sculpture of a gauntlet, the Daedric sigil emblazoned upon the palm. Attempts to move it were in vain. I must show it to Archmage Sadoth during his upcoming visit. Perhaps he will know more. While we couldn't move the relic, I was able to pry 4 rings from it. I'm sure there's a connection between them and the ritual the students were attempting. I'll store these in the Arcanium until we can consult with the Conjuration Master to learn more.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wasn't there another one? Oh well. If I see it, I see it, but if I don't, it's not that important. You can help loot the stuff that's all trying to jump at me, like the... Okay, there's a chest here. Right. Oh, eh. I don't want it. Ah. Okay. Bleh. No, I don't want to use the potion of magic. Come on. There we go. Vinegar. Oh, there's potatoes, there's salt, and there's vinegar. Why can't you make some salt and vinegar chips in this game? Iron helmet. This is the back way. I don't want to go there. So let's stumble blind until I can find the way out. So I always get lost in the midden. I wonder if I should re-enable the apocalypse and elemental magics. I forget why I disabled them. I think it had something to do with just wanting to simplify everything. Derirum Durenis by Vorian Dureni. I'm 611 years old. I have never had children of my own, but I have many nieces and nephews and cousins who have been raised with the tales and traditions of our ancient, illustrious, and occasionally notorious clan, the Dureni. Few families in Tamriel can boast so many famous figures, wielding so much power over the fate of so many. Our warriors and kings are stuff of legend, and it is not to dismiss their honor and their achievements to say you have heard quite enough about them. I myself have never picked up a sword or written an important law, but I am part of a lesser-known but still important Dureni tradition, the Way of the Wizard. My own autobiography would be of little interest to posterity, though my nephew, nieces, and cousins indulge me to tell wild tales of life in the chaotic second era of Tamriel, but I have a few ancestors whose stories should be told. They may have changed history as we know it as dramatically as my better-known relatives, but their names are in danger of being forgotten. When was this published? Most recently, Lysandus, the king of Daggerfall, was able to conquer his ancient armies of Sentinel, in part thanks to his court sorceress, Medora Dureni. Her grandfather, Javron Dureni, was imperial battle mage to the court of the Dunmer Empress of Tamriel, Kataraya, assisting her in creating peace in a time of great turmoil. His great-great-grandfather Peladil Dureni had a similar role in the first potentate, and encouraged the Guild Act, without which we would not have all the professional organizations we have today. His ancestor, many times back, was the witch Raven Dureni, who, with her better-known cousins Aiden and Riain, brought an end to the tyranny of the latter Alessian Empire. Before the Sigics of Artaeum, it is said, she created the art of enchantment, learning how to bind a soul into a gem and use that to ensorcel all manners of weaponry. But it is the story of an ancestor even more ancient, more distant than Raven I wish to tell. Asliel Durrani harkens back to the humble beginnings of our clan in the tiny farming village of Tiragel on the banks of the river Kalmus, which was then called the Diran, hence the family name. Like all on Somerset Isle in those days, he was a simple planter in the fields, but while others only grew enough to sustain their immediate kin, even distant cousins the Durranis worked together. They would decide as a group which fields were best for wheat, orchard, vine, livestock, or apiary, and thereby always have the best yields of any farm which worked alone, doing the best as it could with what it had. Asliel had a particularly poor farm for most kind of agriculture, but small herbs found its stony, loamless, acidic soil very comfortable. Out of necessity more than anything else, he became an expert in all manners of herbs. For the most part, of course, they were used in flavor and cooking, but as you know, hardly any plant grows on the surface of our world without a magical potential. Even so long ago, witches already were in existence. It would be ridiculous for me to suggest that Asliel Durrani invented alchemy. What he did, what we can all be grateful for, is that he formulated it into an art and science. There were no witches' covens in Tiragel, and of course there would be no mages' guild yet for thousands of years, so people would come to him for cures. He learned for himself the exact formula for combining black lichen and rue brush to create a cure for all manners of poison, and the amount of willow and anther to crush and mix with chokeweed to cure diseases. There were few much greater threats in Tiragel for those peaceful days than disease or accidental poisonings. Yes, there were some dark forces in the wilderness, trolls, chimera, the occasional malevolent fairy folk, and will-o'-the-wisp, but even the youngest, most foolish Altmer knew how to avoid them. There were, however, a few unusual threats which Asliel had a hand in defeating. One of the tales told of him that I believed to be true was how he was brought a young niece who had been suffering from an unknown disease. Despite his ministrations, she grew weaker and weaker every morning. Finally, he gave her a bitter-tasting drink, and the next morning ashes were found all around her bed. A vampire had been feeding on the poor girl, but Asliel's potion had turned her very blood into poison without harming her in the least. If only this formula had not been lost in the mists of history. This would have been enough to make him a minor but significant figure in the annals of early Somerset, but at that point in history, a barbarian tribe called the Lochvar had found their way down the Diran River and recognized Tiragel as a rich target for raids. The Durrani, not being warriors yet but simple farmers, were helpless and could only flee and watch the Lochvar take the best of their crops raid after raid. Asliel, however, had been experimenting with the vampire dust and brought his cousins to him with a plan. The next time the Lochvar was sighted in the Duran, the word went out and all the most able-bodied came to Asliel's laboratory. When the barbarians arrived in Tiragel, they found the farms deserted, and assumed that all had fled as usual. As they set about stealing the bounty, they suddenly found themselves under attack by invisible forces. Believing the Durrani farms to be haunted, they ran away very quickly. They attempted a few more raids, for their greed would always eventually overpower their fear, and each time they were set upon by attackers who they could not see. As barbaric as they were not stupid, and they changed their mind about the source of their defeat. It could not be that the farms are haunted, because the crops were still being tended and harvested, and the animals seemed to show no fear. The Lokvar decided to send a scout to the farm to see if he could spy their secrets. The scout sent word back to the Lokvar that the Durrani farms are populated with flesh and blood, entirely visible Altmer. He continued to watch as his barbarian cohorts moved down the river, and he saw the elderly and children flee for the hills, while the able-bodied farmers and their wives went to Asliel's laboratory. He saw them go in, he saw no one come out. As usual, the Lokvar were repelled by invisible forces, but their scout soon told them what he saw happening in the laboratory. The next night, two of the Lokvar approached Asliel's farm very stealthily, and managed to kidnap him without alerting the rest of the Durrani. The Lokvar chieftain, knowing that the farmers could no longer count on the alchemist to make them invisible, considered an immediate attack on the farms. But he was a vengeful sort and felt he had been humiliated by these simple farmers. A crafty plan emerged in his mind. What if the Durrani, who always saw his barbarian tribe coming, for once did not? Imagine the slaughter if no one even had a chance to flee. The scout had told the chieftain that Asliel had used the dust of a vampire to make the farmers invisible, but he was not sure what the other ingredient had been. He described an incandescent powder that Azrael had mixed into the dust. Azrael, of course, refused to help the Lokvar, but they were experts in torture as well as pillage, and he knew he would have to talk or die. Finally, after hours of torture, he agreed to tell them what the incandescent powder was. He did not know the name, but he called it glow dust, the only remains of a slain will-o'-the-wisp. He told them they would need a lot of it if they wanted to turn the whole tribe invisible for the raid. The Lokvar grumbled that not only did they have to find and kill a vampire to attain his dust, but find and kill several will-o'-the-wisps to get theirs. In a few days' time they came back with the ingredients the alchemist asked for. The chieftain, not being a complete idiot, made Azrael taste the potion first. He did as he was told and turned invisible, demonstrating that it did truly work. The chieftain put him to work creating more. No one apparently noticed that while he did, he was nibbling on black lichen and rue brush. The Lokvar took the potion as he doled it out, and soon, but not too soon, that they didn't suffer, they were all dead. The scout who had seen Azrael mixing the invisibility potion had apparently mistook the glow of the candlelight in the laboratory for an incandescence which the second ingredient of the invisibility potion did not possess. The second ingredient was actually dull, simple redwort, one of the most common herbs in Tamriel. When they had insisted during torture that Azrael tell them what the incandescent powder was, Azrael remembered that he had once experimentally mixed glow dust and vampire dust together once, and created a powerful poison. It was simple enough to steal a little redwort from the barbarians' camp, mix that with the vampire and glow dust mixture, and create a potion that was in fact an invisibility poison. An invisibility poison. After curing himself, he gave the poison to the barbarians. The Lokvar, being dead, never again raided the Durrani farms, and having no other enemies, they were able to grow more and more prosperous and powerful. Generations later, they left Somerset and began their historic adventures on the Tamriel mainland. Azrael Durrani, because of his excellence as an alchemist, was invited to Artaeum and became a Sijic. It is not known how many more of the common formulas we know today were invented by him there, but I have no doubt the science and art of alchemy as we know it today would not exist without him. But that is all in the distant past. Azrael's innovations, like my modest ones, like the achievements of the Durranis throughout history, are but a stepping stone to the wonders which will come in the future. I wish I could be there to witness them, but if I can only share some of the past with the children of Durrani and the children of Tamriel, then I'll consider my life well spent. Okay. What? Oh. What?
Skyrim could not be more different from elsewhere.
Skyrim. 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 Elsewhere. Speaking of elsewhere. Onkano's an idiot. Kitty cat, wake up.
Skyrim could not be more different from elsewhere.
I've tested your scrolls.
Were they magnificent?
Were they supposed to explode? Because they exploded.
No, that was not supposed to happen. But Cesargo is pleased to see that you are here and not in pieces.
Well,
You are a
thanks,
good
I
friend
think.
to have done this. Cesargo will not forget it.
Follow me.
Then
I need
lead
your
on,
help.
friend.
Cisarco added to the third slot.
You haven't
How
heard
may
any
this
more
one
about
serve
dragon
you?
sightings, have you?
What do you need?
You need it. But you need
We follow then. Khajiit guards your back.
You have any idea?
it.
Better bottle their flame. The right buyer would pay an immense amount.
Good.
Bottle their flame? I can't. No, I don't think I've any interest in that sort of thing.
Good to see. So you wish to master the arcane arts?
Yeah, that's it. Give me. Creates a hovering light. I should tell you the cost and the level of the spell. I mean, you can infer it from the value, but I'd still rather just have it tell me outright.
Until next time.
Yeah. Because the problem I had with the spell mods is that it just felt like you ended up with like way more spells than you would ever need. What time is it? 3 in the morning? I don't think my character strictly needs sleep right now. Alright, what was I gonna do? Mist Cave. Right. Do 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 da 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 da.
If you would, the summoning of undead is even less advisable outside the college. It's possible, but we've had... Arniel wondered if perhaps they'd... I hadn't... As I he lost... And then there's... Though, something about using frost magic to... Spells and incantations for those with the talent to cast them. Until next time.
What can I do for you, friend? How may this one serve you? What do you need? We follow then. takes care of that.
Manamarco, King of Worms by Horacles. O sacred isle Artaeum, where rosy light infuses air, o'er towers and through flowers gentle breezes flow, softly sloping green-kissed cliffs to crashing foam below, always springtide afternoon, housed within its border. This mystic, mist-protected home of the Sigic order, these counselors of kings, cautious, wise, and fair. 10 score years and 30 since the mighty Remans fell. Two brilliant students studied within the Sigic's fold. One's heart was light and warm, the other dark and cold. The matter ladder Manamarco whirled in a deathly dance, his soul in bones and worms, the way of the necromance. Entrapping and enslaving souls, he cast a wicked spell. The former Galarian had magic bold and bright as day. He confronted Manamarco beneath gray Sapporo Tower, saying, "Your wicked mysticism is no way to wield your power. Bringing horror to the spirit world, your studies must cease." Manamarco scoffed, hating well the ways of life and peace, and returned to his dark artistry, his paints, death, and decay. O sacred isle Artaeum, how slow to perceive the threat! When the ghastly truth revealed how weak the punishment, the ghoulish Manamarco from the Isle of the Wise was sent. To the mainland Dawn's beauty more death and souls to reap. You have found a wolf and sent the beast to flocks of sheep. Galarian told his masters, a terror on Tamriel has set. Speak no more of him, the sage cloaks of grey did say. 'Twas not the first time Galarian thought his masters callous, unconcerned for men and mare aloof in their island palace. 'Twas not the first time Galarian thought 'twas time to build a new order to bring true magic to all, a mighty mages guild, but 'twas the time he left at last fair Artaeum's azure bay. Oh, but sung we have of Vanus Galarion many times before, how cast he off the Sigic's chains, bringing magic to the land. Throughout the years he saw the touch of Manamarco's hand. Through Tamriel's deserts, forests, towns, mountains, and seas, the dark grip stretching out, growing like some dread disease, by his dark necromancers collecting accursed artifacts of yore. They brought to him these tools, mad wizards and witches, and brought blood-tainted herbs and oils to his cave of sin, sweet akaviri poison, dust from saints, sheaths of human skin, toadstools, roots, and much more cluttered his alchemical shelf. Like a spider in his web, he sucked all their power unto himself. Manamarco, Worm King, world's first of the undying liches. Corruption on corruption, till the rot sunk to his very core. Though he kept the name Manamarco, his body and his mind were but a living, moving corpse as he left humanity behind. The blood in his veins became instead a poison acid stew. His power and his life increased as his fell collection grew. Mightiest were these artifacts, long cursed since days of yore. They say Galarian left the guild, calling it a morass, but untruth is a powerful stream, polluting the river of time. Galarian beheld Manamarco's rise through powers sublime. To his mages and lamp knights before my last breath, face I must the tyranny of worms and kill at last on death. He led them north to cursed lands, to a mountain pass. Oh, those who survived the battle say its like was never seen, armed with magicka, armed with armed with ensorcelled sword and axe. Galarian cried, echoing, Worm King, surrender your artifacts, and their power to me, and you shall live as befits the dead. A hollow laugh answered, You die first, Manamarco said. The mage army then clashed with the unholy force obscene. Imagine waves of fire and frost, and the mountain shivers. Picture lightning arching forth, crackling in a dragon's sigh, like leaves the battle mages fly to rain down from the sky. At the necromancer's call, corpses burst from earth to flight, to be shattered into nothingness with a flood of holy light. A maelstrom of energy unleashed, blood cascades in rivers. Like a thunderburst in blue skies, over lion's sudden roar, like sharp razors tearing over delicate embroidered lace, so at a touch did Galarian shake the mountain to its base. The deathly horde fell fatally, but heeding the dying cries, from the depths the thing they called Worm King did rise. Nirn itself did scream in the mages and necromancers' war. His eyes burning dark fire, he opened his toothless maw, vomiting darkness with each exhalation of his breath, while sucking in the fetid air felt the icy touch of death. In the skies above the mountain, darkness overcame pale, then Manamarco, Worm King, felt his dismal powers fail, the artifacts of death pulled from his putrid skeletal claw. 1,000 good and evil perished then, history confirms. Among, alas, Vanos Galarian, he who showed the way, it seemed once that Manamarco had truly died that day. Scattered seemed the necromancers, wicked, ghastly fools. Back to the Magus Guild, victors kept the accursed tools. Of him, living still in undeath, Manamarco, king of worms. Children, listen as the shadows cross their sleeping hutch, and the village sleeps away, streets emptied of the crowds, and the moons do balefully glare through the nightly clouds, and the graveyards people rest, we hope, in eternal sleep. Listen and you'll hear the whispered tap of the footsteps creep. Then pray you'll never fear the Worm King's awful touch. Okay then.
All this talk of dragons returning to the world makes me more than a little nervous.
Ours is to follow, friend.
This ends now. Yeah.
Fire and Darkness, the Brotherhoods of Death by Inear Gorming. Brother, I still call you brother, for we share our bonds of blood, tested but unbroken by hatred. Even if I am murdered, which seems inevitable now, know that, brother, you and I are not innocent, so our benedictions of mutual enmity is not tragedy, but horror. This state of silent, shadowed war of secret poisons and sleeping men strangled in their beds, of the sudden arrow and the artful dagger, has no end that I can see, no possibility for peace. I see the shadows in the room move through the flame of my candle is the flame of my candle is steady. I know the signs that This note was found where it had fallen beneath the floorboards of an abandoned house in the Nordic village of Jallenheim in the 358th year of the Second Era. It was said that a quiet cobbler lived in the house, whispered by some Nunya member of the dread Morag Tong, the Assassin's Guild outlawed throughout Tamriel 34 years previously. The house itself was perfectly in order, as if the cobbler had simply vanished. There was a single drop of blood on the note. The Dark Brotherhood had paid a call. This note and others like it are rare. Both the Morag Tong and its hated child, the Dark Brotherhood, is scrupulous about leaving no evidence behind. Their members know that to divulge secrets of their orders is a lethal infraction. This obviously makes the job of the historian seeking to trace their histories very difficult. The Morag Tong, according to most scholars, has been a facet of the culture of Morrowind almost since its beginning. After all, the history of Resdain, the ancient name of Morrowind, is rife with assassination, blood sacrifice, and religious zealotry, hallmarks of the Order. It is commonly said that the Morag Tong then is now murdered for the glory of the Daedra Prince Mephala, but common assumptions are rarely completely accurate. It is my contention that the earliest form of the Tong additionally worshipped an even older and more malevolent deity than Mephala. As terrifying as that Prince of Oblivion is, they had and have reverence for a far greater evil. Writs of assassination from the First Era offer rare glimpses into the Morag Tong's earliest philosophy. They are as matter of fact as current-day writs, but many contain snatches of poetry which have perplexed our scholars for hundreds of years. Lisping sibilant hisses, ether's sweet sway, rancid kiss of passing sin, and other strange, almost insane assertions into the writs were codes for the name of the person to be assassinated, his or her location, and the time at which death was to come. They were also direct references to the divine spirit called Sithis. Evidence of the Morag Tong's expertise in assassination seems scarcely necessary. The few instances of someone escaping a murder attempt by them are always remarkable and rare, proving that they were and are patient, capable murderers who use their tools well. A fragment of a letter found among the effects of a well-known armorer has been sealed in our vaults for some time. It was likely penned by an unknown Tong assassin ordering weapons for his order, and offers some illumination into what they looked for in their blades. As well, the mention of Vonora, the island where the Tong sent its agents in retirement. I congratulate you on your artistry and the balance and heft of your daggers. The knife blade is whisper-thin, elegantly wrought, but impractical. It must have a bolder edge, for arteries when cut have tendencies to self-seal, preventing adequate blood loss. I will be leaving Vonora in 2 weeks' time to inspect your new tools, hoping they will be more than satisfactory. The Morag Tong spread quietly throughout Tamriel in the early years of the Second Era, worshipping Mephala and Sithis with blood, as they had always done. When the Morag Tong assassinated the Emperor Riemann in the year 2920 of the First Era, and his successful potentate Versidiu Shae in the 324th era of the Second Era, the assassins so long in the shadows were suddenly thrust into the light. They had become brazen, drunk with murder, literally painting the words Morag Tong on the wall in the potentate's blood. The Morag Tong was instantly and unanimously outlawed in all corners of Tamriel, with the exception of its home province of Morrowind. There they continued to operate with the blessings of the houses, apparently cutting off all contact with their satellite brothers to the west. There they continue their quasi-legal existence, accepting black writs and murdering with impunity. Most scholars believe that the birth of the Dark Brotherhood, the secular murder-for-profit order of assassins, was as a result of religious schism in the Morag Tong. Given the secrecy of both cults, it is difficult to define the exact nature of it, but certain logical assumptions can be made. In order to exist, the Morag Tong must have appealed to the highest power in Morrowind, which at that time, the Second Era, could only have been the tribunal of Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek. Mephala, whom the Tong worshipped with Sithis, was said to have been the anticipation of Vivek. It is not logical to assume that in exchange for toleration of their continued existence, the Tong would have ceased their worship of Mephala in exchange for the worship of Vivek. The Morag Tong continues, as we know, to worship Sithis. The Dark Brotherhood is not considered a religious order by most, merely a secular organization offering murder for gold. I have seen, however, proof positive in the form of writs to the Brotherhood that Sithis is still revered above all. So where, reader, asks is the cause for this schism? How could a silent war have begun when both groups are so close? Both assassins' guilds, after all, worship Sithis, and yet a figure emerges from history who should give those with this assumption pause. The Night Mother. Who the Night Mother is, where she came from, what her functions are, no one knows. Karlovac Townway, in his generally well-researched historical fiction 2920, the last year of the First Era, tries to make her the leader of the Morag Tong, but she's never historically associated with the Tong, only the Dark Brotherhood. The Night Mother, my dear friend, is Mephala. The Dark Brotherhood of the West, unfettered by the orders of the Tribunal, continue to worship Mephala. They may not call her by her name, but the danger of murder, sex, and secrets is their leader still. And they did not, and still do not to this day, forgive their brethren for casting her aside. The cobbler met his end in the Second Era, who saw no end of the war between the Brotherhood and the Tong was correct. In the shadows of the Empire, the Brothers of Death remain locked in combat, and they will likely remain that way forever. Goody for them.
You are taking us somewhere. What do you need? Khajiit is ready for any troublemakers. someone there?
It's nothing. We'll rip you open.
How may I serve you? What do you need? Lead on, friend.
You seen that shrine of Azura? They say the Dark Elves built it after they fled from Morrowind. Sight to see.
How may I serve you? are dead.